Everyone, I would like to welcome you all to Cambridge City Council's Housing Scrutiny Committee meeting. My name is Councillor Pounds and I'm the chair of this committee meeting, taking place at 5:30 on the 20th of June 2023. So first of all, I will roll call all the councillors alphabetically by surname to ensure that they are present. We have received apologies from Councillor Lee. Please can you answer, are you present, Councillor Griffin?
Yes.
Councillor Holloway, Martinelli, Councillor Porra, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Tong,
Yeah.
Councillor Titalavaki, Councillor Wade, myself, Councillor Pounds, and finally the Executive Councillor for Housing and Homelessness, Councillor Bird.
I'm here.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our tenant and leaseholder representatives, which I will now call your roll call by surname. Christabella Amitai.
Present.
Thank you. You're on Teams. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks. Lulu Agate.
Yes, Chair.
Christabella. Oh no, we've had Christabella. Diane Best.
Yes.
Present.
Mandy Powell Hardy.
Present.
Hello. And Diana Minns.
Yes, I'm here.
The officers permanently present throughout this meeting are our Director of Enterprise and Sustainable Development, Fiona Bryant, Interim Director of Communities, Suzanne Hemingway, our Committee Manager, Sarah Steed, and Meeting Producer, Boris Herzog. It's actually Chris, isn't it? Yes. Thank you very much for attending this evening. Other officers and public speakers will join us throughout the course of the meeting, and I will introduce them at the start of relevant agenda items. Just a few notes of housekeeping, please. The copies of agenda are found on the City Council's website under Committee Meetings, Minutes and Agendas. Please try to refer to specific page and paragraph numbers within the agenda. Please, can those present in the council chamber note that everything on your desk, including your laptop screen, is likely to be broadcast at some point, including your phones as well, I should say. The camera follows the microphone being switched on, so councillors and officers are requested to wait a couple of seconds before speaking to allow the camera to catch up. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak. Please, can those participating in the meeting via Teams indicate that you wish to speak via the chat column or raised hand option. Please do not use the chat column for any other purpose. The meeting chat is neither confidential nor private and can be subject to a freedom of information or data protection request. This evening is that the committee will receive an oral presentation from officers. Members of the committee will then discuss the report and vote on the recommendations. Tenant and leaseholder representatives will participate in the debates on all agenda items, but may only vote on items in Part 1 of the agenda. Part 1 of the meeting will be chaired by the tenant leaseholder representative, and I will chair Part 2 of the agenda. Following the vote of the committee, the Executive Councillor, as the decision maker, will be asked if they agree the decision. So we'll move on to agenda item 2. Could any committee members advise if they have any declaration of interest and identify which agenda item their declaration relates to? Can I take that as a no? Yes. Thank you. Agenda item 3, minutes of the 14th of March 2023 meeting have been submitted to this meeting for approval. It has been drawn to my attention that 3 tenant representatives' names have been included in error within the Executive Councillor attendance space at the top of the minutes. Could the minutes, it's one of those little typos, yeah. Could the minutes be approved subject to these names being deleted from that section of the minutes? Did anybody have any points on the minutes they wanted to raise? All happy? Yeah, great, thank you. So we move now to agenda item 4, the appointment of Vice Chair, Tenant Leaseholder Rep for 2023-24, and introduction of tenant and leaseholder representatives. Could a representative please advise the committee on the Vice Chair, Tenant Leaseholder appointment, please?
Thank you, Chair. We would like to nominate Diana Minns.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Diana. Thank you. I just now please ask the tenant and leaseholder representatives if you would introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Lulu Agate.
Thank you.
I'm Mandy Powell-Hardy.
Might be helpful if you have a role particularly to tell us, actually, might be helpful.
I do green inspections and recycling and to do with the HSC.
Thank you. Thank you. And Diane.
I'm Diane Best and I'm the leaseholder representative.
Thank you very much. Now,
Can I just, I'm Diana Minns and I'm a tenant rep. Can I just say that, do you mind if I just intercept here to say that we're not going to take you through the paper, but we've circulated a document explaining what we do, what we
that's
think we
very
do.
helpful,
You should
thank
have
you.
it amongst the
Yes.
many papers on there. Any questions, come back to us. If you want to know individually what our experience is, we could tell you, but we've got the job already, so we don't really need to tell you, do we? But have a look at that and see what we think we do and how we can help you and be part of the council's involvement with tenants and leaseholders. Sorry about that.
no, thank you very much. We have one sad item to announce, and that's the passing of Colin, who was a member of this committee for as long as I've been on it. And I would now ask, please, if Diana, if you would just pay a short tribute and tell us about Colin Stevens.
Okay, well, I've written out the words because I can never remember these things. And I'm sorry it's a little bit too long, but I think it's important when we do lose somebody, sort of mid-term, so to speak. Well, we all first met Colin when he responded to a mailing some years ago about becoming a co-opted member of the Housing Scrutiny Committee. Although he wasn't selected that time, he showed his commitment to resident involvement and Cambridge tenants by becoming a resident inspector, I think, and he did voids inspections and took part in community days, which he continued to do. And that's part of the wide group of volunteers that monitor and critique as well. We don't just say, look at that, we say where they're wrong. We critique the services provided by the council for its tenants and leaseholders. And in 2020, he became a tenant rep on the Housing Scrutiny Committee. And I remember, I checked it, his first meeting was at the September committee in 2020, which was the second of our glorious pandemic-imposed virtual meetings, which we all struggled with. And I'm sure for his first meeting, it was quite daunting for Colin too. I forgot that right, I think, in the sequence. And Colin was very proud of being a tenant rep, and he committed his time and enthusiasm to taking part in committee meetings and all the meetings in between. He always read the papers, he wrestled with a system and jargon that challenges us all, yes? As another rep said to me, he wasn't afraid to ask a seemingly stupid questions. Now, to be honest, it's often those very questions that set us all thinking. And I think that's really an important part of what Colin did. Now, Colin's background in the army and his role as a carer for his beloved wife, Mary, is she watching online today? So she's watching it online. So hello, Mary, and hope everything's going well for you. Anyway, so he brought a new perspective to us. He wasn't really that much like the rest of us, I don't think. Because he's got a background in the army and a very different kind of background to the rest of us, which really informed, I think, the way he often tackled things, yeah? And the same rep, we mentioned before, described him as caring deeply about the rights of tenants and wanted them to have what the council has signed up to give them. And he was fierce in defence of the council when the easier rules were misunderstood by tenants. And he was a compassionate man. He followed through cases and issues, often going that extra mile. And for the past couple of years, Colin had also been an enthusiastic and once again very proud member of the ARCH, which is the Association of Retained Council Housing Tenants Group. And he was a member too of the Housing Ombudsman's Tenants Panel. And he was very keen to go to those meetings, and he did do a lot. He went to a lot of online training and things. He did it very thoroughly. And as a Lichfield Road resident, he kept an eye on the needs of that local area, pushing for change and improvements when he saw the need. I've heard many describe Colin as he described himself, a rough diamond with a heart of gold, and not backwards in coming forwards. We'd always chide him when he described the elected reps as the Big Six, saying it wasn't just us doing resident involvement. but just this once, I'll go along with that. And from the remaining big 5 to the big 1, goodbye, Colin. We'll miss you, and thanks for being part of the team.
Thank you very much, Diana. I believe Councillor Bird would also like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I got to know Colin very well downstairs when we used to have a 5-minute break or whatever, and he used to tell me some really good stories. But I know he'll be sadly missed in this committee. He had his views, and he'd tell you them straight. Like Diane said, he was a great guy. And Mary, we're all thinking of you, and we all definitely miss him in this committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd also like now to invite David Greening to say a few words. I should also mention that as well as paying a tribute to Colin, we'd like to also say a few words about Lulu, who I believe this is your last evening with us. So if I can ask David Greening. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think I don't think I've got a world of difference to say about Colin than's already been said very eloquently by both Diana and Jerry. All I would say is that Colin, for me, sort of lifted any room that you were in, whether that be virtual or whether that be in person. And he was a very colourful character, and he'll be deeply missed. And as Diana said, offered something different to the other tenant reps and resident representatives that we have. But I also wanted to say a massive thanks to Lulu. This is her last committee as an elected representative. I've always really appreciated Lulu's contributions to the committee, not least because she comes at things with a very kind of balanced, fair and insightful approach to her work. She, again, very diligent about reading all the papers and information she's got, not afraid to offer constructive challenge, but does so in a very respectful manner. But I think on top of that, I really have valued Lulu's kind of lived experience, and that's something I think we're quite proud of here at the city, in that our resident representatives, a lot of them do have really valuable different experiences, lots of lived experiences that help support and inform really our work with tenants and leaseholders. And the great thing about Lulu was she's able to articulate all that extremely well. Just to give an example, she's very, very helpful in helping us look at our hoarding policies, for example, and that's something I'll always value. So thank you, Lulu, from me for all your years of service. I know that it wasn't an easy decision to step down, and we fully understand and support your reasons, and we just wish you all the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I think we'd all like to show our appreciation, Lulu, for the time that you spent with us.
I just say thank you very much. The main reason I'm leaving is because I run a choir for people who love singing but sing badly, and it's getting more successful, so I need to put more time into that. So if any of you are in that camp, have a chat with me. We sing really badly, but we love it.
Thank you very much. All right. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is a petition named Save St Thomas's Play Park. So we've received a petition containing over 50 valid signatures. So the petition organiser, are you here? Hello. So if you have 5 minutes, please, to present your petition, and then we will have a discussion for a maximum of 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. There are 3 of us, so we're going to do our best job to kind of seamlessly present our points to you. Thank you, Chair, Executive Councillors, tenant representatives and other people here this evening for the time to raise our concerns on behalf of around 70 residents in Coleridge Ward about this particular project. And you'll know the petition, I think I looked the other day, 69 people, so nearly 70 people took the time and trouble to go online and sign the petition and came out at the end of May for a photograph with us to show, I think, the strength of their feeling, which is that their issues and concerns, they don't feel they're being listened to at the moment about this particular project. So as we know, we're all busy people, so for people to take the time to do that speaks to, a genuine sense of wanting to be listened to. So my name is Patsy Zell, I'm a local resident and a user of the play park, and so are my colleagues, and they will introduce themselves at the handover point. So we established a group known as, St Thomas's Save St Thomas's Play Park. We came together a few months ago because of these concerns. This is a protected play park in your local plan. That gives it a particular status. There's also been, I think it's fair to say, a lack of information about this project and its progress. More has come out since our concerns went public, and we know that there's a further consultation event planned for July, but at the time there'd been a very long gap, and there isn't really anywhere a particular dedicated webpage or anything like that where you can look up what's happening with this project and what the council's response has been to feedback received previously. So I think it's fair to say local residents have felt disappointed with the way that it feels that the council is just pressing on with this project. So the petition and the photograph give you evidence that there's a large group of people who want to be reassured that their concerns are being listened to. The 3 areas of concern, and we sent round a statement today just to give you more information about the particular issues of concern that have been raised with us. And I'm just going to deal with your original decision in September 2021. And I think it would be fair to say that some of the information presented as justification for building on the St Thomas's protected play area, there's been a kind of undermining of confidence in the robustness of that information. I would particularly reference the references to significant antisocial behaviour problems in that play park or its underuse. The report at the time had no evidence associated with it, no papers were attached. There were no numbers, no actual evidence prayed in aid in justification of building on a protected play area for those reasons. We've been asking for that information. We've had some responses from your officers, but we've asked other officers in the council and have now been told we need to put in a freedom of information request to get some of the basic information that was used as evidence for you making this decision. That just doesn't feel right. I know this council prides itself on taking transparent decisions and openness and accountability to local people in the way that you make decisions, but we shouldn't have to ask for evidence around what's the justification for a decision to build on a protected public open space through Freedom of Information Act. And as this committee, I'm sure you would have expected to have that detail when you made your decision. Again, the options appraisal in the original report, there wasn't really one. The decision was really to go for St Thomas's play park. That just feels, it's set in an isolated justification. Even if other sites were taken and dismissed, there really should have been a robust indication of the consideration that you made in deciding to go for this protected open space area. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Sarah now, who will introduce herself, but I would invite the executive councillors to make sure that that justification, the robust evidence that sits behind it, is put into the public domain as soon as possible, and we'd really invite the rest of you to come over to Coleridge and have a look at these sites and see what you think about them, whether they're appropriate to be lost as protected open space or whether they can be substituted.
Hello, can I just say that, because I forgot to mention it, that we will ring the bell 30 seconds before the time is up, just as a warning, folks, to enable you to wrap up. Okay.
Thanks. My name is Sarah Healy-Dilks. I'm a resident of 13 years living with my family on St Thomas's Square, a house adjacent to the second garage site that's involved in this development project. We've been a garage tenant for 12 years and a park user over this time. The St Thomas's scheme has had no real sense of genuine engagement with residents, neighbours, users of the park and garages. Since the exhibition of the scheme in July 2022, there's been no updates of information for residents who feel we are losing very valuable resources to our life and the quality of our life and activities. Until recently, in the recent months, when a group, Save St Thomas's Play Park, formed in this vacuum of no information. And, sorry?
Can we ask our third, as the chair, you have discretion to give us a little bit longer, our third person?
Yep, just to say that, we'll get Dougal in, but it feels like Groundhog Day and we feel ignored and not consulted as residents.
Our third speaker is
Yeah, Dougal,
online.
thanks.
Hi, my name is Dr. Dougal Ritson. I've been a resident on St Thomas's Square for 12 years, and I'd just like to pick up on the proposed substitute spaces. So firstly, the current park's over an acre in size, mostly open space, and it's actually, in fact, well used. Look at the photo in front of you. And personally speaking, my wife and I have used it for about every day for the last 5 years. And it's generally used for sort of football, cricket, ball throwing games, throw and fetch games for dogs, and things like that. But the proposed substitute sites are much smaller in size, and even if the larger of the two sites will have houses in it, the same activities will no longer be possible, and ultimately will lead to a loss of use of the park, impacting our lives, health and well-being. And so this contradicts actually the council's own guidelines, because of qualitative replacement for the existing park. Exacerbating matters further, the new houses will be positioned amongst the green space, giving the impression of privatised land for those houses, and consequently putting members of the public off from using the space. And I know this very well from walking my dog around Lancaster Way. It's public land, but you feel like you're trespassing. It's just unavoidable in these circumstances. Similarly, for the new residents or potential new residents, they're going to have dogs and children running around outside their houses, barking and screaming at various times of the day. So there'll be an escalation of conflict between residents and park users, which again contravenes council policy. And as for biodiversity, well, if targets need to be met, a small investment could easily realise the 20% uplift that's required in the park as it stands, yet the council has decided not to invest in the park since 2016. And finally, an alternate site for the new green space should have been included in the proposal, but it was not. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your responses, and if you've got any questions, we'll try and answer.
Thank you very much, thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Carling, first of all. He's joining us this evening. He is the Executive Councillor for Open Spaces. Councillor Carling.
Thank you, Chair. I thought the committee was going to have a discussion and then myself and Councillor Bird were going to come in at the end. Is that not the case?
I believe you wanted to go first, is that?
I think I was going to go first before Councillor Bird, after councillors of the committee have had a discussion, if that's okay.
Understood. Thank you. Right, so I'll go to the floor now and see if people would. Councillor Griffin, hold your hand up.
Thank you for thank you for your comments. I hope that we have been in touch over the last month or so, and I hope some of that communication has been helpful and has addressed some of your concerns. So I know that the current proposal, so as far as well, you may know that I was elected just in May, okay? So a lot of this is new to me, but it seems that there was a consultation in June or the summer of 2022 last year, and based on that consultation, the proposal was dramatically modified, I believe. A number of houses were reduced, for example, and the play area was preserved. So, you know, that seemed to be a big issue in the petition, was the loss of the play area, and that has been addressed. The play area is not going to be lost. The other thing is that the green space in the current proposal is the amount of green space is not being reduced. Now, again, the current proposal has yet to go through planning. The current proposal will have to go to the planning committee eventually. And there it can be challenged by the public and by the planning committee, because you're right, it is a protected space, and but the council can develop on protected spaces if they make a good case for that to the planning committee. So a lot there. In other words, a lot of things have to happen before this project will actually get underway, and there will be plenty of time for the public to give their comments on that, including on the 5th of July, when we have another consultation in the area on the current proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Griffin. Can I ask Jane Phillips, please, if you would like to speak? I'd like to just use you, Lulu's, yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris.
It's working.
I'm Jane Phillips. I'm chair of the Birdwood Area Residents Association, which covers Birdwood Road and all the roads leading off it, which covers this area. So this is in our patch. We have 600 residences in this area and approximately 1,700 residents that we represent in various ways. Now, we were constituted in 2014, and our aims are to promote neighbourliness and a sense of community, and to form a conduit to the city and county councils about issues relating to this area. Now, I went to the previous lot of in last summer, where the proposals were looked at, and I was absolutely assured that there was going to be no. The play park was safe. So a year ago, I was assured that the play park was safe and that there was going to be no reduction in green space. It was going to be moved, but there was not going to be any reduction. So as far as we were concerned, this was a non-issue because it was a misrepresentation to say that the play park was going to, was going to go. So as far as we're concerned, this was not an issue for us. But what we did do was in our remit as conduit to the councillors, as soon as we knew about this, which was quite late on, we weren't informed of it. As soon as we knew about it, we got in touch with councillors, told them what was happening. They wrote a letter saying, no, this is not going to happen. I think councillors have been remiss in keeping us informed. I agree there. Now, in promoting a sense of community, we actually have a reasonable amount of green space, not in Coleridge, but in Cherry Hinton, with Cherry Hinton Hall Park, which is just 2 minutes away from us. But we do not have a community hub inside, an indoor community hub. So if the council actually want to do something worthwhile for our area, an inside community hub would be a real benefit. And if that could be included in the proposals, we would be extraordinarily happy. I think it would cover some of the issues that are related to the loss of the loss of the garages, because some people have their hobbies going on there. So if there were a place where they could continue with their hobbies, which was a community hub for us, we would be very pleased. So my question is, can we have an indoor community space, please, as part of this proposal?
Thank you very much. I think Councillor Porra had a hand up next. Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
I think Lulu was ahead of me, if that's all right. Well, I just wanted to say that with my other hat on, I'm the coordinator of Cambridge Friends of the Earth, and we always encourage people who are worried about a potential development to talk to the council as soon as possible before the planning application goes in, just to see if it's possible to get a feel of what might be happening. And one of the things that one of the people over there, Patsy, did you mention biodiversity? Or maybe it was the man on the over the ether, yeah, mentioned about biodiversity, and I know that there are bats there, aren't there? So that might be an issue. I just wanted to say I think it's fair enough to ask questions now.
Thank you. Should we go to Councillor Porra and then...
Thank you very much, Chair. I noticed the speaker mentioned additional information. I don't think I've had that as a member, so I don't know if that's something that's been circulated to members or not, but if not, I'd be grateful to receive it. I was a little concerned about the reference to FOI, freedom of information. Obviously I appreciate there may be some reason I'm missing that we have to do this through an FOI request, but I would normally hope that at Housing Committee we would be as open as we could be, so I'd be grateful for a response on that. I don't know whether because it relates to ASB or something, there's something confidential, but I'm assuming we must have at least some high-level reports. I should note I sit on Planning Committee, so my comments tonight are relating to the principles through Housing Committee, nothing to do with the principle of development, so I'm remaining unfettered. But again, we have raised before concerns in our group with open space and the need to preserve it in any development, whether that's council development or not. So I would be very grateful if I could receive some reassurances that tenants will be, and residents in that area will be heard in the next round of consultations, because I'm a little concerned to hear about these gaps. And I know that's not what we intend to do. We always want to report back to our tenants. So I hope that we can receive some assurance from the Exec Councillor and the Open Spaces Councillor that that will be happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porra. Do you have any more questions from the councillors? I do apologise. I'm afraid you haven't registered to speak, and so you're not able to... I'll see how the time goes, if that's okay. Yeah. Do you have any more questions from the floor, everybody? In which case, would you, if you were able to make a short point, that would be fine. Yeah. You need to speak through a microphone, please. Yeah. Yeah. This one here is now working. Yeah. Mm.
Hi, so I'm Noah Healy-Dilks. I've lived with my mother and father for, I think, about 12 years in the area. I've spent from, age 7 till now 20, mostly living in the area until the past few years. And I heard there's been an anti-social or whatever thing about the area. I think as a teenage male, that most of these anti-social things will probably be levied towards, I would have heard something about it. I've never heard anything about it. That's slightly strange if there is an anti-social behaviour thing about it. Also, I've campaigned for local electoral stuff, mainly Labour Party things, hand out leaflets, gone to doors for God knows how many years. And I think I've had one response from a
from a person at a door. And I've been out because I've been away for the past 2 years with university and various other things. I think me and my father had leafleted 5 doors. And I think we had 4 people come out and talk to us and go, what's this about? We leafleted, I think maybe 3 weeks ago. And this was the first local residents that ever heard of this. Bear in mind, I'm sorry, I haven't got the
Thank
dates
you, yes,
right, but
I think you've made your point.
was
now.
it
Thank you very
June
much.
that the first thing was? Okay.
Thank you. If there are no more questions from the...
Can I just provide some points of clarity?
yes,
Clarification,
please
or-
do, yes.
yeah. So, just on the freedom of information requests, one relates to ASB. We're trying to find a way to release that. That does have telephone numbers on there, names and so on. It's not an easy thing just to release. So we're working on that as we speak. The other information that was referred to in the HSC refers to various open spaces. And again, we're working to see what we can release, what's in the public domain already, and we have no problem with releasing that information. So we've just got to be careful what we can and can't release. So point of clarification there. Just a point of clarification on the consultation. So it would have gone to HSC in September 21. Garage tenants were written to ahead of that process in probably August time. So they had a long lead time to find alternative garages should the redevelopment go ahead. And then, of course, we had various other engagements, sometimes by phone, sometimes by email, sometimes meeting people on site ahead of the voluntary pre-app consultation, which took place in July last year, I think July 17th. We got a lot of feedback from the original proposals, which had 11 homes, but did preserve the overall public space, but it was split into, we gave 2 options of where the open space could be and the public chose a particular area which is opposite where we are. But the overall open space was to be retained, so no loss of overall open space. There was other feedback on that proposal that we showed to the public. We are going back on the 5th of July. Again, this is a voluntary pre-app proposal. This is what we do in development. We go back to the public before we submit planning. So there'll be another opportunity for the public to demonstrate whether they like the proposals, whether they've got any comments on the proposals. And then following that, we would expect to make a planning submission, of which there'll be a statutory consultation. So there'll be another opportunity for the public to comment on. That's those particular points. But I think it's really important to state that a lot of effort has gone into contacting the community in general, whether directly affected as leaseholders in terms of garage leaseholders, or in the immediate neighbourhood who had gates to the open space. They were also contacted directly. So just a couple of points of clarification there. I just wanted to let people know.
Thank you very much, Ben. We are now out of time for general questions. I'm going to ask Councillor Carling now to sum up, followed by Councillor Bird.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much for bringing this petition. I think it's really important that we're able to have these discussions. Before I respond, I do just want to stress that you don't need to wait for any future council meetings. If you have any questions or want to discuss anything with me in particular further, please do get in touch. My email address is on the website and I'm always more than happy to engage with you. So in the petition, you say there's a proposal to take away this protected play area. And the title of the petition, Save St Thomas's Play Park, suggests the same thing. So I'd first of all just like to reassure you, as others have said, that it's not proposed to remove the play park. While the development would need the existing equipment to be removed, it would be replaced with either the same equipment in a slightly different location or better equipment. And I know there has been concern from the community, and I think you mentioned this about underinvestment in the play park. So this would be a really good opportunity to bring in better equipment and solve some of the issues with the existing park. So I hope we can work together with the wider community to do that. In the July 2022 consultation, a majority of residents felt the proposals would enhance the local area. However, there was concern about the scale of 11 houses on the site, and so officers took that away and came back with a new proposal for 7 houses. Apologies for any confusion if it's 7 or 8, the plan shows 7 houses. These new proposals keep about 69% of the green space on the site, that's over 2,000 square metres retained, and they, as I've said, don't impact on the play park because we will keep it, although it will have to move somewhat. We refer to the green space as protected, which it is. We recognise how important green spaces are to people, and that's why, as well as retaining 69% of the space, the plans have provision to create some additional green space just over the road at the Eastern Garage site in the form of a new, really high-quality community garden. I hope that's reassuring. As a council, we take our open spaces incredibly seriously, and we care very much about making sure all residents have high-quality green spaces nearby. So we do stand by the many public statements that we've made to that effect, which you mention in the petition. Specifically, you ask us to review the emerging plans. And in terms of the process, so we have the consultation coming up next month, but as you point out, the plans haven't received planning permission. And so they're already planned to be reviewed in detail by the planning team, and then the application will be referred to the planning committee for decision. So after the proposed consultation event next month, plans will be finalised, they'll be submitted as an application. The council's planning team will then treat them with exactly the same rigour as any other application, as will the councillors on the planning committee. There will be a formal consultation period after the application is submitted, where residents and any other interested parties can submit written comments in support of or in objection to the application, giving planning reasons. And then at the planning committee meeting itself, verbal presentations can also be made by anyone that's put in written comments. Those are all then taken into account by decision makers on the committee, who can require the particular conditions be brought in to address any perceived issues, and then the application can be approved or refused. You circulated that document this morning, which was very helpful, so thank you for that. I'd like to respond to just a couple of the points you raised there. The first section talked about reasons not to develop on the play park. As I've said, that area would be retained, ideally improved. So I hope that addresses some of the concerns there. And as I said before, I hope we can work with the community to make sure that reflects what everybody wants and needs. The section called Communication with Residents and Users raises quite a lot of detailed matters, which I think others have commented on to an extent. But I might just reiterate that there'll be lots of opportunities going forward through the planning stage and in the consultation event next month. I can't really comment on the idea of an inside community hub that was mentioned. That may be a good point to raise at the consultation next month as it relates to the detail of the application, and the planners are probably the most appropriate people to raise that with. I think that covers the areas which I wanted to comment on. Councillor Bird will have more to add, but just to again clarify, please do get in touch. I'm more than happy to have detailed and any discussions about this that you'd like to, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carling. And Councillor Bird, if you'd like to sum up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Carling. I know the area very well. I grew up around that area, and where I used to live backed into one of the garages, the garage area. So, and I know the play area, which a lot of people don't know it's there, the way it's tucked away, but I know it very well. And we as a council, like Councillor Carling has just said, we don't want to get rid of open spaces. We do our utmost to keep them. It will be redone and it'll look beautiful once it's done. And when they do the garage area into open spaces, that'll be a community gardens. So it's up to the community, sorry, get my teeth in, to decide what they'd like in there as well. So it's up to you as residents to bring ideas to us, and then we can see what we can do. Like I said, the community hub or something. We could find something we could do with it. So please let us know, and that way we will all work together. I was at the consultation in last year when that was held at St Thomas's Hall, and it was very interesting. But like I say, we haven't made a decision yet. Once we do, the planning application will go in, but you will be kept informed at all times. If it goes quiet, don't worry. It's not that we forgot about you. It's just that we're working on certain issues and then we'll come back to you. I hope that reassures you. And you can contact me anytime as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bird. Thank you. Thank you for coming along. Right. We now move on to general public questions, and we have one question from the public. So if I could invite, is it Dr. Chiodo to join us? You have 3 minutes for your question, and then 2 minutes for that one. Yeah. Oh. Oh, we've done that, is that okay? Yeah.
Your name?
That's 3 minutes for your first question and 2 minutes for your follow-up question. I'm happy to just wait a moment until it's quiet in the chamber. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. My name is Dr. Maurice Kyodo. I'm a resident of Eakin Road, here to speak on agenda item 11. I speak for Save Eakin Road, a community group of over 60 people from Eakin Road, which formed 12 months ago. I last addressed you here on March 14th regarding the Eakin Road project. To summarise our position, we continue to oppose any proposals to demolish our estate, and we continue to urge the council to fully investigate and pursue an upgrade and refurbish plan. Councillors, when I last addressed you in March, we requested a 2-stage timeline for the project. This has now been outlined to us and all residents, for which we are grateful. But councillors, communication with residents since then has unfortunately been quite poor. The timeline and a list of options were revealed at the liaison group meeting on March 16th, and the Eakin Road website was updated shortly after. Yet residents were only written to on June 14th, 3 months later. The last time residents were written to with project details was January, a 5-month gap. In that January letter was a promise to write to all residents again in April, which never happened. Councillors, our own attempts to engage with your officers have been frustrating. We wrote to you on February 21st recommending maintenance and improvements to the estate. We wrote on March 3rd with questions about how the project might be carried out. We wrote again on April 3rd with questions about the project options presented in March. We did not receive responses to any of these until May the 5th. Councillors, the primary Eakin Road information website is not a good or effective resource. Documents are poorly labelled and difficult to find. Hyperlinks are not clear. Much of the information is now inconsistent or out of date. Many residents are not internet connected, and we often encounter residents who tell us, "I have no idea what's going on." Councillors, in light of all this, we propose the following improvements in communication with us and with the residents at large. 1, that the council writes to all residents within a week of each liaison group meeting or of any substantial progress milestones, informing them directly of key updates. 2, that in such letters it is made clear where on the Eakin Road website supporting material can be found, and specifies that residents may request paper copies sent out to them by calling a given number or writing to a given address. 3, that the council undertakes to respond to project queries from us or any resident within 3 weeks of receipt. And 4, that the council redesigns its Eakin Road website to make it more usable and reviews it regularly. Councillors, we fully appreciate the complexity of the Eakin Road project and the heavy workload your officers are under. We do not seek to rush you, but given what is at stake, people's homes, lifestyle and community, we urge you to refine your communication strategy. Regardless of the final outcomes project, it's not justifiable to keep residents in the dark through poor communication, especially when it's such easily resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I'm not sure, is it an officer to respond? Yes, it's you, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, Ben Binns, Interim Assistant Director of Development. Just some points of clarification again. The first thing is upgrade and refurbish is one of the options that is being considered by our consultant JLL. That's now also published on the website, so that is there for all to see. I do think we have to acknowledge there has been a comms gap, as you said. However, as you know, the letter is very detailed. It took a number of different queries across a number of different teams across the council and also the county council, and each point was taken into consideration with due care. And there are also individual queries by phone and email from that estate that also have to be answered. So we do try and answer every query as quickly as we can, but it does take time. Some of these questions are complex or require further information, so we do need to look at that with due consideration. We did acknowledge the time it took on the letter sent out on the 31st of May, and we did thank residents for their patience. In terms of communication, again, there's been at least 21 instances where we have written to residents, or we have sent a flyer out, or we have participated in an event where people can ask us questions. That does not include the Thursday afternoon events that are going on with the housing team and the repairs team as well, and that's for leasehold residents as well as tenants. So there is quite a lot of dialogue that is going on there, a lot of engagement, and we are doing our best to make sure we answer as quickly and as effectively as we can. We do say in every letter that tenants, freeholders and leaseholders can contact us via email, in person, and in writing. And we also make clear that any plans or anything that residents want to see, we'll do paper copies of, and we'll produce paper copies in the Barnwell Library and the Abbey People Hub as well. So we're trying to maximise the reach of people who may not necessarily be able to look on the website. The Resident Liaison Group does refer to 3-week response in terms of the terms of reference, but that's for the website update. So we are pretty good at doing that. We will look to see if we can keep to 3 weeks, but I can't guarantee that. It depends on the complexity of the question, depends on how many questions we get, and it depends what level of answer is required related to do that. In terms of the website, we're happy to look at that. Again, we've not had any complaints about the accessibility of the website or where things can't be found or can be found, but happy to have that discussion at the next liaison group. If you've got some suggestions there, happy to do that. I think that answers most of your queries that you've requested there. But just to reiterate, we're trying to put all the information up onto the website. You are right, the information there now will start to become out of date, which is why we've appointed the consultant JLL to ensure we've got the right information to make an informed choice shared with you as we move along the process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes. So there seems to be quite a reliance on this website for communicating information about the Econrid project. There are residents who are not internet connected. So if you place updates on the website and it's expected that people are sitting at home hitting refresh on the website 24/7 waiting for updates to appear there, that's unreasonable for two reasons. One, no one has the time to do that, and two, many residents don't have the internet or don't have access to it. So if you wait 3 months to write to residents saying, hey, there's an update on the website, then that's a 3-month black spot for residents. We're not talking about people having their front fence painted here. We're talking about people having their homes taken away from them. This is quite a serious project by the council. If you just put information on a website without proper announcement, this is a tree falling in the woods. Nobody is there to hear it. You have to communicate. Communicating means actively sending messaging, not making things available. People don't have time or the understanding to find these resources. It's on the council to do this because the council has come to make this project. We didn't invite the council to Econrid Road. The council invited itself. In regards to website updates, if you're going to rely on this as a resource for the project, then you need to keep it updated. It currently says things like a decision will be made in January 2023. That's obviously not true because that's come and gone. if this is your resource, then residents at least have it should be made as an effective resource. And why, just another question, why we need to wait for liaison group meetings to act or to have feedback or to provide feedback to you. Those are every 3 to 4 months, right? If we have things in the interim, why not engage with us either as a resident group or as individual residents to be able to correct those things? I mean, a 3 or 4 month gap is a huge amount of time. We can move much faster. We'd like you to move much faster. We'd all like to move much faster and to receive communications effectively and in a timely manner.
Thank you very much. Would you like to respond, or would you like to send a written response?
Very briefly, I think we have already referred to those that are not able to access the internet in that we do provide and offer paper copies. That's in a letter that's sent to all residents, so I'll refer back to that. And in terms of communication, we've acknowledged that the complexity of answering some of those questions take time, and we will look at that just where we can, try and speed that up. But if the questions are complex and it takes time, it will take time to answer that. But I do refer back to my previous answer.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing your questions. Right, I'd like to now invite Diana Minns, tenant leaseholder representative, and we're moving on to part 1 of the agenda. Thank you.
Diana, there's a Dinah and a Diana and a Diane on this group now, so we'll just make sure we get the vowels and things in the right order. Okay, right, the agenda item we'll be looking at now is agenda item 7, which is on page 17 in my papers anyway. It's a compliance update, and I think that Rennie Barnard will be speaking to that. Ren.
Thank you. It's just a quick update on the status of the progress of the compliance programme, which covers the 6 compliance areas within the council. There's just one item of notice within this report, that is for James Elms under the DCM condensation damp mould process, where he will probably provide an update on that, but it was always a combined effort to do so in one report. Is that okay? So from that point, I'll just start at the top and say that the gas safety, we maintain 100% compliance on gas safety, and we are halfway through this year's programme since the inception of the new contractor. So we're having 82% first-time access rate, which is really good, and we continue to build on that. On the fire safety update, there will be ongoing works, and for the purpose of this report, we'll just be bringing updates to every meeting with regards to the status of that. For example, fire doors, and there's also some work at Kingsway Flats and compartmentation work that's to be undertaken there as well. We maintain full compliance on water hygiene across our portfolio, and then also I have not reported at this committee on the electrical inspection condition reporting since November, when the new contractor took over and we consolidated the data in the heating services and the electrical inspection programme. So the last report on the dashboard was actually at 56%, and once we've reviewed all the data, it was reported at 61.53%. So there was an increase on that compliance area. On the passenger lifts, which is across the portfolio, 2 is currently out of order. One is Kingsway Flats, one Ditchburn Place. Ditchburn is a very short-term out of order with a part on order to fix that. Kingsway is slightly longer in that respect. And then also on the asbestos management, so over 1,000 inspection points to be visited. We have already targeted 200. We're making really good progress with that position in getting our re-inspection programme. So I'm not going to comment on the dam mold condensation, as this is a separate agenda item, and then also the other compliance risk reduction measures for handover Princess Kingsway remains in situ, so to be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Ren's report? Yes, I can't read it.
Councillor Holloway.
So, Councillor Holloway, I'm so bad at reading people's names. From this distance, I need a new pair of glasses. It made no difference. Anyway, Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. Yeah, just on page 18 with the fire door inspection programme, there were 909 with no access after 3 attempts. I just wonder, what do you do in that case? What do you do once you've had no access after 3 attempts?
So when the contractor reports 3 times no accesses, it gets back to the council, and then we will, from within the compliance team, also ask our other partners across the council, housing officers, etc., to assist us with gaining access. There might be other reasons we can't. Sometimes it proves very successful without engagement. Sometimes we just continue to endeavour, so the best endeavours to demonstrate due diligence to get in and get that inspection done.
Anybody else? Councillor Pollard?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, picking up on Councillor Holloway's point, I think I've raised previously that it would be really good to have a clear access policy for our tenants. Obviously, for really safety critical stuff like gas, we can force entry if we have to or get in. But for things like this, so fire doors, not immediately safety critical, but they're important, and it's concerning there's 909 we can't access. And I think I'd received a commitment previously that we were looking at something to sort of try and explain to tenants the process, because obviously there's other tenants in those blocks who are affected if someone doesn't fit a fire door. So I just wondered if you could update on that, if officers could update, and also perhaps a commitment for when we might have this. Because I think it's fair to tenants and it's fair to officers that we have a clear process where we've had a refusal or a non-access, it may not be a refusal, that everyone's clear about what steps happen next. Because like Councillor Holloway, I'm a little concerned that that's 909 properties where we haven't been able to get in. Thank you.
Part of this is obviously the meaningful engagement, and we see this on other programmes as well. For example, on the kickstart of the electrical inspections, where we have people refusing access to say we can't have access to all the electrical outlets in the property, they have to move stuff. So it's to be as meaningful as possible to shed information and demonstrate that our attempts to actually reach out and gain access for that. So it's not probably an easy answer across all the maintenance and the portfolio of the items we look after. And tenants do get disrupted quite often for these compliance programs and other inspections. So it's just making sure that we do that as meaningful as possible, working with tenancy engagement, our partners at City Homes, housing officers and others to assist. But there's normally a reason why we're not able to, and we're working hard to reduce that as best as we can.
Councillor Wade? I couldn't see you behind this monitor. But... Oh, I didn't realise. I thought it was Councillor Fatala.
In page number 18, where you have mentioned waiting for this to be completed to avoid false alarms, which has been pushed back for a few months. Why it was pushed back? I have one more question. In page number 19, out of 249 surveys, how many properties required some sort of work? Or what work have we done? Just a bit of a specific as to what actually we did. And again, for the first question, what was the specific reason why we had to push it back? Thank you.
Councillor Varkey, so the installation has gone in and is in situ. We are looking at 6 options as a proposal in terms of the cause and effect of that system, and is understanding all the 6 options, working with our contractor to make sure that we get the best result, while that's only an interim position until we've completed all the compartmentation work. And that is the status we're at. So we have meetings, and we've had meetings, and there's more upcoming where we will be looking at every single option. But all of these cause and effect items is not considered likely. We anticipate good progress very soon, as we have narrowed it down to 2 options that we need to discuss with the contractor that have done the installation.
Other questions? Oh, Councillor Porritt again.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the reassurances. I suppose my concern is there are going to be some tenants who, for whatever reason, don't want to engage. And I think what I've been asking for is some kind of policy so we know they're not missed. So that if someone has a good reason not to allow entry or wants to negotiate, that's fine. But the bottom line is if 100 of these 909 people say absolutely not, and that is putting other people in the same block of flats at risk, I just want to make sure that we're not losing those people. And I know officers are working really hard on that, so I wonder if the ruling group or the exec council wants to say something about whether we could at least commit to making sure that we have a track of the people who aren't responding, because I really do think we need to be open about what we would do in that situation for the benefit of the community, as well as the person in the flat, there's other people living round, but those fire doors are really important. And I don't want to get heavy with people, but equally, we have a responsibility on this committee to make sure that our properties are up to safety standards. Thank you.
Does the Executive Council want to make a comment at all?
Councillor Purr, I can assure you that whatever happens, we'd make sure everybody was safe. So if we can't get in, we try so many attempts, then we send letters, if I'm correct, and if there's no joy there, then we can go further. We don't want to cause a health problem or anything with anybody who doesn't want us in there, but we have to, as part of their tenants agreement, that they let us in to check this equipment. So I can assure you that will be done. Okay. Avery?
That sounds a good assurance to me, certainly. And I mean, there's a whole other issue which isn't here, is when we have leaseholders within mixed block of resident of leaseholders and tenants, and the tenants have fire compliant doors, but there's no guarantee the leaseholders do. That's a whole other can of worms, isn't it, Diane? Yeah. That's something we may need to look at, yes? But that's not something dealt with here, just a mention, yeah? Further questions from anybody? Oh, sorry, Ren, would you like to come back? Yeah.
I'd just like to respond to leasehold. So with regards to the fire door inspections, we're engaging with the home ownership team, and we have done so. There's a list of fire doors that we have reviewed that absolutely is a must criteria. We are going to send out information to make a self-assessment, and also we're going to offer inspections of doors. We have done some already. So, yeah, we're just trying to help leaseholders best we can, where we can. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now, technically, it says on it, this report is for information, not for decision, but I do believe, Diane, did we not call this report in? Yes, we did. So technically, we just want to technically put it to a vote, because that's what we did it by calling it in. If it's any member of the committee, for those that don't realise it, can call in a report that just says it's for information. Just to point that out, if you hadn't been briefed with that, if you're a new councillor. Anyway, okay, so can I just ask those in favour of the simple recommendation? Yes, there's nothing else we need to say, that we've note the progress of compliance and related work detailed. I'd also like to add thanks to Ren for all the work they're doing and monitoring it for us. It's really very important. Thank you. So those in favour? Yeah.
Unanimous, Chair.
Anyway. System, we only know about hands, so that's what we're doing today in my bit of the committee, yeah? Right, okay then, thank you very much. And Executive Council for Housing, I'd remembered. Do you agree, approve, or whatever you need to do? Yeah?
Yes, I do, and I just want to thank all our officers for the hard work.
Yeah.
Because they are keeping up with it, they're doing their best.
Going on from that is the agenda item 8, which is the damp and mould self-assessment and policy, which is obviously a very key area because of recent developments that the regulator of social housing, the housing ombudsman, some poor child that lost their life because of it. So it's a really key area. So I would like to ask, who's introducing this? Sorry. Sorry. Is there on the screen? So, James.
Many thanks, Chair. My name is James Elms. I'm Director of City Services, a new director across the council. That includes responsive repairs who are accountable for the delivery of the damp and mould response. The report provides a recommendation for the Exec Councillor to approve the council's response to damp and mould issues across its housing stock. The recommendation includes acknowledging the self-assessment and the action plan. The report highlights the Government's Charter for Social Housing Residents and the Housing Ombudsman's spotlight on damp and mould. The Council has created a working group to address the damp and mould cases and to develop a specific policy regarding reporting mechanisms. Appendix 1 covers or provides the self-assessment framework, and you'll see the Council's responses to that self-assessment framework. Appendix 2 provides a detailed action plan that's been driven from the responses to the self-assessment. So the self-assessment asks some questions, the council answers those questions, and then Appendix 2 provides the action plan for us to deliver the response from that self-assessment. Appendix 3 is the damp and mould policy itself. The policy aims to address and manage issues related to damp, condensation and mould, and to promote tenant health and well-being. It focuses on compliance, protecting structures, i.e. the buildings, investigations and providing advice to tenants. The policy outlines the council's and the tenants' responsibilities, emphasising education, communication, risk assessment and monitoring. Proactive measures include inspections, audits and collaboration with health colleagues to tackle housing stock problems. Tenancy audits are being conducted with a target of around 10% of all our housing stock each year. There's a heat map attached to the damp and mould policy that provides a focus that enables us to have a focused approach on identifying high-risk areas that will need kind of immediate support. The council has also engaged a specialist company to provide in-home treatment for us, so the treatment of damp and mould cases in the home. This council has signed up to the council schedule of rates and is compliant to our procurement process. The focus over the summer months prior to our high-risk winter months is twofold. One is a reactive treatment of affected houses, so i.e. identifying houses and treating those affected. And secondly is proactive engagement, education and support of our tenants to help prevent any issues in the winter. Hope to provide answers to any of your questions tonight, although it's quite a new area for me. I may not be able to answer tonight, but I will provide a written answer thereafter. Thanks ever so much, Chair.
Thank you, James. Now, there is an amendment up. Would you like to introduce that? It's an amendment to add something in that was very particularly pertinent for leaseholders. And I know that was raised by Diane Best, our leaseholder rep, saying we need to make it clearer that leaseholders have responsibilities to check on the mould and damp issues within their own homes, as well as the council doing anything on the exterior. Yes?
Yeah, so that amendment covers that piece, Diana.
You've had that circulated previously, but it was also as a paper on wherever you're sitting. So we'd need to just take that as an amendment, technically, to the document that originally went out. But it's a significant, important amendment. Diane.
I would like to thank Lynn Bradley for her very prompt response to my request at our briefing only last week, that has produced this excellent, clear, well-written document where everybody can understand what the leaseholder's responsibilities are. And so thank you very much.
Okay, and well, yes, and generally, I know James is sort of newish into this particular post. I'd like to thank Lynn for all the work she's done and her team around the damp and mould policy, because it's worked out very well, and we've been very proactive in doing this. We're responding, but very quickly and effectively, and in all kinds of ways to a key issue, and I think that's very important. She needs to be thanked for it. I know she's not here now, and I know she will be leaving us soon, so I thought I'll get my 2 pence from now. Thank you, Lynn, and all the others. Thank you. Okay, are there any questions on this damp and mould policy, self-assessment stuff? Ms. Robertson.
Thank you. Of course, here we are living in the 21st century, yet there are many, many households around the country who are facing problems of damp and mould, and I'm afraid Cambridge is included in that. It's believed that as many as 450,000 homes across England have this problem, and it really should not take the death of a child to make us all wake up and do it, but unfortunately that's the way it often is. However, we now have a report before us, a very thorough report, going through each of the recommendations of the Housing Ombudsman with a clear and thorough response to those recommendations. And I really think we should congratulate the officers on producing such a thorough job. Now, I wanted to raise the issue that the topic of damp and mould really needs a joint approach from the landlord and the tenant, because it's a combination of the two that will be the only way to crack this. You can't have damp and mould without condensation, I think, generally speaking. And the condensation landlords often claim is because of the way the tenants live. They may not use the ventilation system properly. But I think if we had an education process in place, and I think R7 and R8 of the responses do cover this to a large extent, I think an education process is useful, because even if you can't have condensation unless you've got a cold surface, and that's the council's job, or the landlord's job, to attend to. But even if you deal with that, the ventilation problems need to be addressed as well. Even in a new property, relatively new property, you have trickle ventilation, which must be used to have an effective way of keeping the damp and mould at bay. So I hope that we can move towards that. The council will do what it can to improve the insulation on all our buildings. It was interesting that the tenant, actually he's not a tenant, I think he's a resident of, owner-occupier resident of Ekin Road, is concerned about the demolition proposals as one of the proposals for that area. Those flats, I'm told, are really badly affected by mould because of their lack of insulation. Equivalent, similar properties elsewhere in Cambridge, owned by the city, have been insulated. Those ones had not yet. And therefore that really important factor is one of the reasons for driving the programme, I'm sure. But what all this needs is a government that is prepared to put money into the long-term investment in this country. Labour introduced a Warm Front scheme in 2000, which provided government-funded grants to make homes warmer, healthier and more energy efficient. And that continued until 2011, when the government, the dual government of the Tories and the Liberal Democrats cut it dramatically and then replaced it with the Green Deal scheme, which was a scheme which actually never really worked properly and was found and was never actually achieved very much because of the poor design and management of the scheme. So what we need is a government prepared to take money from the things like the excess profits being made by energy companies and put it into the long-term investment in this country. Coming back to Cambridge, my question is, do we know what is our estimate of the number of homes that our city council owned which have damp and mould problems? I know in the previous report it talks about a small number which may be known about and are being dealt with. But what is our estimate for the full picture? And do we know how many housing association properties have got damp and mould problems? And do we know how many privately let properties have damp and mould problems? This whole issue needs to be addressed, and we need to put to the government, while they're still hanging on at the thread, that they really ought to be starting the process of investment. So if we can provide the data on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'm sure the Housing Ombudsman is looking at the housing association stuff as well, because in fact it wasn't the council-owned organisation where that terrible occurrence happened with the child that died. It was actually one that had been, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't directly council, so there is a lot of work being done there. Any response to that? If not, we could have, I don't know if we got those figures that Councillor Robertson asked for. I thought it's quite difficult to know what the private sector's doing. And it also depends, obviously, on, often it will be related to when the properties were built and what they did at the time, that now we look at it and think, well, why did they build them like that? So those are all the other factors that need to go in as well, I know. I don't know if anybody wants to come to that one as a summing up. Yes? I've got at least two other speakers. I've got Lulu had her hand up.
Thank you very much, Diana. Hello, James. I have a question. On page 35, in the top box, it says, we have identified through our complaints analysis star survey results in preparation for the regulator for social housing. It says here, improvement generally needs to be made on communication with tenants, and this is something that is being explored. Do you have a deadline? Do you have a timeline? I mean, for that.
So, Lulu, there isn't a timeline at the moment, but what I can assure you is that tenant engagement also falls into some other stuff that we need to progress as soon as possible, and it's potentially about active engagement, so going out and speaking to people. It's also about online engagement plus written engagement. So it's a mixture of that package to make sure that we manage to reach out and touch to as many people as possible. In terms of when we're going to have a formal policy on that, then I would just say as soon as I possibly can.
Another question.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I think this is a general point really, that one of the things that I notice if there's ever a complaint about the council, you can guarantee it'll turn up on social media. And a lot of people use social media as a way of staying connected. I think since the pandemic, it's become even more of a lifeline for people. And there's a new culture, it seems to me, of there are myriad ways of communicating on social media. But I think one of the things that the council, I can understand why the council doesn't do it, and I can't, it would take investment and time, but all the complaints reach social media and none of the successes do. And I think that that's a missed opportunity in a way. So it'd be great if the council, I know there is a Facebook page, there is a presence there, but a lot of people don't use Facebook, and we've discussed this in the tenant reps meeting, and I call myself an internot. I don't really want to do it at all. But you have to engage with these technologies. And I do think that what happens when people complain on social media is it revs up everybody else's feelings of indignation and not having been treated properly. And that then sort of has a sort of negative effect on whether people contact the council or not. And I think that needs to be taken into account. Thanks.
Thank you, Lulu. And Councillor Martinelli, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I just want to say that we very much support this report, and I thank the officers for their work on it, and we support the amendment as well, which I think is very appropriate. I think strongly that managing any damp and mould is really important, and obviously particularly in terms of patients with respiratory disease, we see this a lot at Addenbrooke's, and it's obviously something that council can act to improve. I think my question really was regarding the resourcing to apply this very good policy across the housing stock. And in particular, the report to me seems at pains to suggest this is all being done with an existing resource. And on page 49, we note that we're repurposing 2 vacancies of multi-skilled operatives to focus on this. And therefore, I guess my question is, these operatives were presumably very busy doing other things. And I guess my question is for us to make a decision or to note this, what are they now not doing that they're instead focusing on damp and mould? I mean, and I assume given the priority this comes under, and as I say, we're very supportive of that's almost certainly a rational and correct decision, but I think it would be useful for the committee to know where the resource is being taken from, and I guess suppose to think in the future about where further resource could be added if necessary. Thanks.
Many thanks. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've engaged a private company to deliver our response to in-house treatment. So, with any luck, and I'm pretty sure that we won't need to flex those 2 additional operatives in there to support them. We've got a company that's doing it on our behalf. So, we should hopefully negate any problems about not doing something because we're doing the damp and mould.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Beth.
Thank you very much. This is a good report, and appreciation for that. My question is this: Cambridge being, because of the 2 universities and new migrants, and what I'm saying, my question is basically backed up with one of my experience in the past, where I and Councillor Jerry Bird had to intervene in a private landlord where it was too late for them to report this to anyone. So in the event, do we have any kind of powers or policies whereby we can go and check private landlords, the private tenants area, where you think there could be some sort of concerns, especially overcrowding international students and the healthcare professionals arriving. Would you think we can do anything, or do we have any power, or if we can help at all, how do we help these first generation immigrants, like the students, and where we clearly understand some sort of overcrowding issues, and the care workers who more likely than not to arrive with the family members, where the private landlords are not very keen or not very particular to invest or repair or resolve these kind of issues. Thank you.
Thank you,
Many
Councillor.
thanks. So not wishing to kind of slope shoulders on this, that falls under our environmental health colleagues who will be able to provide you with a written response on that one.
Thank you.
Suzanne, I believe you wanted to say something.
I was really going to say what James has said. We do, as an environmental health service, investigate complaints. We can't proactively go into all privately rented properties, but we do investigate where there are issues reported, and we are looking at ways in which we might perhaps support private tenants to set up some stronger engagement mechanisms, more similar to the engagement that we have with our council tenants. So I'm sure Yvonne and her team will be happy to report back to a future committee when we've taken that a bit further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't even read my writing. Tong. I couldn't read my writing. Isn't it terrible? Write it down. Councillor Tong and then Councillor Porras. Sorry.
Don't worry at all. So I'm the City Councillor for Abbey Ward, which, if I remember correctly, has around 1/3 of all of the damp cases. It's a very damp-prone ward. And I just wanted to draw attention to one of the statements on page 61, which is that it would be the tenant's responsibility to adequately heat rooms between 18 and 21 degrees Celsius. And I just wanted to ask, is this a particularly fair expectation when heating, it's very, very expensive at the current moment. I think the fact that there is such a large number of damp and mould cases in such a poor ward shows that there is a relation between this.
So apologies, I will have to defer and get to a written response on that one for you, Councillor, because I'm not sure on what our policy is on that. Apologies.
Don't worry at all. Thank you.
Next person I've got is Councillor Porras.
I think, Chair, to be fair, Councillor Holloway had his hand up just before me.
Difficult
So
to sweep them. Councillor, there, how gracious. Councillor Holloway.
Thank you. So it sort of follows on from what Councillor Robertson raised, and I'm not sure was answered, but has the demand that's sort of, I think, rose quite steeply over the winter remained at a similar level, or has that dropped off a bit? And even if it has dropped off a bit, I suppose, are we looking at how far it might be likely to rise again next winter and preparing for that? But otherwise, thank you. Really impressive report, and the work that has gone on since, I guess, the end of last year. It's been really impressive, so thank you.
Many thanks. I won't take any credit for the work. I've just picked it up today, this recently. So obviously it drops off in the summer because it's drier, it's warmer, condensation and damp are less prevalent then, and that's why we are proactively treating houses who have got it at the moment, and educating tenants to support them through making sure that they are best placed to ensure they don't have damp and mould in their houses. That will uptick, and that's why we've provided the additional resource to target any cases. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I assume you don't have exact numbers on that at the moment, but if you don't, then yeah, that answers it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe that Dave Prinsep wanted to come in.
I'm also new, so apologies that we seem to be coming to this fresh. Lynn's done some really good work in here, and I think the one thing that comes across in this and the approach we're taking, we're actively encouraging tenants to come and tell us when there are problems. So it's not a case of avoiding. We seriously want tenants to come and tell us when there are issues, and we have provision in place so people can do that easily. So that's part of it. Also, the housing officers and tenant liaison officers are all geared up to make sure they are identifying issues, reporting issues. So when they're out and about, they are picking up those problems. There's a responsive repair, which James's teams are dealing with, so that's dealing with issues as and when they arise. Also, there's a planned works that we have as well. So Lynn has got funding for some new building surveyors to come in and do things like external wall insulation. So we're currently recruiting for staff in that role as well. So there's a combination of plans, so we actually improve the properties to start with to try and prevent the issues in the first place and the reactive side. So we're taking it from both sides at the moment and liaising and getting tenants involved to tell us when there are issues. And if they're not telling us, pick those up through the tenant audits and things like that as we go around our day-to-day business.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody? Oh, Council. Have anybody wanted their hands up? Another hand? Sorry. Ben, did you?
Sorry, just to add to that, so with the heating services contractor that visited 6,500 and we actually have 100% access, we do triage anything that we see as well through that. So just supplementary to all the other good comments from all the other officers, there's a lot of work in various work streams working together on this.
I think so if you go into a council property, you've got this little checklist that you need to be going through, even though you know not as though you're looking, you're going through, and that's the only way to do it. If you get access, have a look. If there's anything that needs to be looked at because the tenant may not realise it, you can then take further action. Thank you. So, Cora, did you want to say something?
Yes, I had some
I can't
questions.
remember.
Thank you very much. First, echo Councillor Martinelli's concern about the resourcing. When we went through the budget, obviously Lynn has done a great job on this. I respect that, fully acknowledge it. But the idea was it would tail off over the summer. But obviously these new papers quite rightly commit us to a really good amount of proactive work. And I do think we need to be very clear about where that's being resourced from and also where that resource is coming from if it's from another area that needs resourcing in its own right. I have 3 minor points. The first is the flow chart on page 68. And I've raised these with James already, so he knows they're coming. I noticed we've got a 2-day response time, but then we don't have a response time for when the surveyor is booked, which seems a bit of a black hole in the policy. So I would urge officers and obviously the exec councillor to make sure that we do have that commitment. I appreciate sometimes it will be to do with whether tenants are free, but I would like to see there that within X days we will have offered a surveyor's appointment and how many times we go back, because I think otherwise it sort of stops after the 2 working days. And I know that once we've got more data, it would be very useful to come back to this committee. I think James committed to that, to just let us know what the kind of lead times are. Secondly, obviously, the proactive reporting that this report puts forward is very welcome. I think particularly, going out, looking at houses nearby to see if they've got the same issues. And again, I'd be grateful if James could just let us know either now or certainly by the next committee when we will get reports on that, because this is a really important issue, as we've all said, because the sooner we know how much good feedback we're getting, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And finally, I noticed on page 33 and page 49, we're talking about soon we're going to add a category of damp and mould onto Orchard, which is our asset management system. So I did query this with James, and his officers very kindly are adding it on now. I am a little concerned that the ruling group haven't picked this up until now. So this is several months where we've not had a damp reporting category on Orchard. So thank you very much to officers for dealing with it very swiftly and getting that on now. But I would like to note my concern that that presumably means that up until now, we've not been able to log those properly on Orchard, and that will affect our statistics going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything you need to respond to there?
I suppose. Well, one is on the flow chart. That is a definite gap that we need to plug. So we set some timescales, and I think that the other 2 questions are kind of self-answered there.
Thank you. Any more comments? Any questions? Oh, sorry, Richard. I didn't realise. Sorry.
This council has a responsibility for housing of all sorts, concern about housing of all sorts in the city. I'd like to know what we are doing in relation to my question about gathering data, or what data we've got for the stock of housing association properties private let properties, and also the shared ownership properties. They're all, have we any idea how much the problem is existence in Cambridge? This is not really a question for James because it's wider than just the council, but we have a general responsibility for all housing.
Can I ask whether that's a kind of, I know that there are joint meetings with housing associations, I can't remember what it's called, there are things, is that something that is discussed? It's at officer level, I believe, yeah, is that correct? We're dealing with some very big, now we've got some quite big housing associations, so it's about digging into their systems. I agree, I think we shouldn't just assume that it's our tenants, anybody can be affected by damp and mould. Obviously, there's a physical effect, can be affected physically, yes, I think, yeah. Suzanne, who's online, we're going to come back on that. Suzanne.
I was just going to come in, Chair, to say that we don't get that data from housing associations, and I think we're very unlikely to get it because they don't collect, these big national associations don't necessarily collect data by district council area. What I would like to encourage all of our elected representatives and tenant and leaseholder representatives to do is, if you do hear of housing association tenants who are having difficulties around damp and mould, to do let us know about it, because then we can pick up those conversations, and understand if there are more widespread issues. Again, we are looking at ways in which we can engage more with tenants who are not our own tenants, and interested to try to support them. But I'm not going to make any commitment that we can report back to you on those issues at a kind of any sort of sensible data level, because it's just very unlikely we can collect it. Similarly on private tenants, we only know what is reported to us. We can't proactively find it out.
Thank you. So clarification on that one. Thank you. Any more questions? Oh, hello, Bella. Sorry, I can't see that on there. Bella, you have.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to say quickly that I was quite impressed with how much work the council is doing with condensation and dump, because I've had to deal with that as well. And the council did attend to me very quickly, and they changed the ventilation. I think within 1 week, someone came in here and changed it. But I've heard, I think some of the councillors talking about education-wise, and just wanted to ask James, at what point do the people that come to change the ventilation, are they able to sort of give us a 2 minutes sort of education on what to do or how to operate the ventilation? Because I know he didn't spend quite a lot of time with me, and it would have been good if I sort of had some idea on how I can stop the mold and stuff. Obviously, I can read it online, but it would have been good to hear that from him.
Point taken. I think that's an obvious engagement opportunity for us to directly help people. So I will go away and plug that gap for you.
Thank you. I think that's important. I think that may also relate to when we let properties, whether they're new properties or old properties, that perhaps older properties, we need to ensure that the actual letting process explains things clearly, so people aren't floundering, not knowing which button to press when and how the heating system works. So I think I know it's a resource issue, but it is a key thing to make sure you get right with the tenant from the beginning, and then recognise we've got tenants that have been there quite a while and perhaps they need a refresher. Perhaps we should be refreshing people's knowledge of what works within their houses as well. That's another resource thing it's worth thinking about. Thank you. No further questions or anything, or no responses, so we go back to the report with the recommendations, which we called that in, didn't we, Diane? So it's a key decision. There you go. The amendment, sorry, I've got a lovely prompts by me. The amendment, which I'll put to you, and it was circulated, it's the very well-written bit about leaseholders. I'll put the amendment to you before we take the substantive thing. So those in favour of the amendment?
Yeah, that's unanimous. In favour.
And anybody against? And anybody abstaining? So that's it. So it's unanimous. I'm on autopilot. Apologies. Right. So I will now put the whole of the recommendations, etc., to you, and the recommendation is basically at 1.1 and 1.2 at page 23. All those in favour?
Yeah, that's unanimous.
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody for all the hard work. I'd just like to mention, I believe that resident involvement officers were also involved in helping draft the damp and mould policy. I'd like to thank them here and now, yes, and I think that's important. I haven't quite, then I'll put it over to you, okay. Jerry, Councillor Bird, do you approve the recommendations?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Thank you
And
very much.
also, I'd like to thank Lynn for all her hard work, and the paper's really good. I'd also like to say that what I want to be done is in the open door and Cambridge Matters, the damp thing is put back in for the next time, which would be really good. And it would be good if there was leaflets in doctor surgeries and places like that, so people can pick up. And then, of course, if we can get it in other languages, that would help. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see why you couldn't have an article in, the local newspapers. That may be a challenge to get anything as positive as that in, but we could try, couldn't we? Yeah. Thank you. The next is agenda item 9, which is, sorry? Oh, do you want a break? Okay, well, those that think they need a comfort break, and now I think about it, we probably all do. Is that okay? We'll have a 10-minute comfort break. Is that fair? Thank you. Welcome back to the Housing Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of June. And we're now going to take agenda item 9, and this is leaseholder income management policy changes. And I believe that Anna Hill will be speaking to this, and Anna is online with a lovely big picture of herself on the screens. Thank you, Anna.
I apologise for that. I just want to start by apologising for the very late recirculation of the leaseholder income management policy, which has been added as an amendment, and I believe you've got paper copies as well. The amendments were made because the policy could have been clearer. So the amendments made are to put 4.2, which is adding in the third option, and to 4.4, which is a new paragraph that has been added. The report is in two parts. So the first part is in relation to a statutory obligation that the council have to offer leaseholders the option of a loan that's interest bearing. The second part of the report is asking that we allow those 5 individuals that we've identified as retrospectively being able to apply for the loan the option to be contacted, so that we can ask them if they want to go ahead with that option. So there is a minimum and a maximum amount that people can borrow, and there is an amount that needs to be paid up front. However, those 5 individuals that have been identified will already qualify and have paid enough towards that loan already that they wouldn't need to pay that 3,900 up front. So what I'm asking for tonight is that this statutory requirement is noted. It is a requirement that was brought in quite some time ago, but last year we were reminded of this obligation. Prior to us introducing this, we have been allowing loans interest-free. However, that has been for a period of up to 18 months as standard, whereas this statutory loan that we will bring in allows people to spread the cost over a longer period of time if they qualify, which will allow them up to 10 years, and therefore hopefully make repayment of these service charges more financially viable for them. The other things I'm asking for is that the policy amendments are approved, and also, as I say, that we're able to contact those 5 individuals retrospectively and offer them the option of repaying that loan through an interest-bearing loan.
Any questions or clarifications? I thought Diane, as leaseholder representative, would have a few words to say. Diane.
Thank you, Chair. This is really welcome because leaseholders in the current climate are struggling quite a lot to meet their service charge obligations, and this is a step forward. But one thing which may or may not be possible, because there may be data protection issues, I think it would be helpful to know the sort of works that are done that are going to exceed the £3,990 that the leaseholder has to, that's eligible for the loan, has to put up front. Because I think it would help certainly the elected members to see it in proportion. You know, if this is the sort of work that would qualify a leaseholder for being eligible for this type of loan, would that be a possibility?
I would need to get back to you on that, Diane. I'd need to speak to our planned maintenance team, because they're the people that will obtain the quotes, and I don't know if they could estimate what that would be until the time came that the works happened, but I can certainly ask them and come back to you.
Any further queries, questions? I do know that I used to live in a block of flats where there were leaseholders, and they had very substantial service charges, didn't they? And I think some of those would certainly qualify for the new up to 10 years repayment plan. Because if you're in something significant happens after years of nothing happening, you could be getting a bill of £12,000 or more, couldn't you? So I think that's a very welcome facility.
Sorry, Chair, just to be clear though, that the qualifying period is 10 years. So you have to have purchased your property within 10-year period to qualify for the interest-bearing loan. So after longer periods, they wouldn't qualify for that.
I understand that, yes. I say for some people would find that, will obviously find it well.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I'm sorry. Councillor, yeah.
Oh, hello. So, last night, Councillor Pora asked about something which was also on my mind, which was about the promotion of these loans, because of the fact there has been so many years without, with a lack of people claiming it, it seems to show they haven't been promoted heavily. And it was mentioned that there are plans to promote them further, so people hear about them. And I was just wondering if there are any details about these sort of plans and how you plan to go about promoting them.
So the 5 individuals who have been identified will be contacted. Obviously, if this is approved, they will be contacted in the next couple of weeks to offer them that option. In terms of going forward, that the offer of that loan will be on their service charge letters that go out. So every single leaseholder who would qualify will be notified in that way.
Thank you. Any further questions? It's good to see it's all updated, and I think if it gets Diane's approval, as far as I'm concerned, she knows an awful lot about this, so that's good. So we've got an amended document. So do we take the amended? It's slightly amended, isn't it? Oh, sorry if I missed someone.
Just to clarify something, would it be a secured loan on the property, whatever the interest they have?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch.
Would it be a
Did you
secured
say a second loan on a secured loan on the property? Sorry, Julia's coming in. But
yeah, coming in to answer that. So yes, the loan would be secured on the property, and we would register an interest in the property in relation to that loan.
Thank you.
Questions? Go in the room. Wave desperately if I haven't seen you. That's okay. That's it. Okay. So I would suggest that we would we've got a new document. So do we accept that as an amended document? Yeah, well, the document was circulated that clarified those couple of things, and it's very easy for you to note because it's got lots of underlines. So I want to say, can we put those amendments to the vote? Those in favour of the amendments to the originally circulated document?
That's unanimous in favour, Chair.
Now, can I put the now substantive document and the recommendations at page 79, 2.1. 2.2 and 2.3. Those in favour?
Unanimous in favour.
Thank you very much. And the Executive Council for Housing and Homelessness, do you approve?
I do, Chair. And thank you, Anna, for a lovely paper.
Thank you.
And then the next one is technically, this is the one when we do this double act, so I'll do it and then we're going to stick for the vote, yeah? So it's now back to Julia. Welcome, Julia. And you're going to introduce agenda item 10 on page 97. It's about carry forwards and other things on the housing revenue account.
Thank you, Chair. This is the outturn report for the housing revenue account for 22-23. And as always, it covers both our revenue position and our capital position for the housing revenue account. From a revenue position, the net variance on the housing revenue account budget was probably the nearest to the budget that it's been in my experience, with a £78,000 underspend, net underspend reported on the revenue position compared to the budget. After we allow for carry forwards, this will move to an overspend of £257,000 that will need to be met from HRA reserves, which we have sufficient reserves to meet. and the carry forwards were all pre-approved in March 2023. So they've already been discussed at a previous housing scrutiny committee where they've needed to be. From a variance perspective, obviously, although the net underspend is minimal, there were some relatively significant overspends and underspends that are detailed in Appendix B to the report. The two largest items were a significant overspend in void repairs, where the authority had more void activity last year than it has had previously, with a backlog of void repairs from prior years being caught up, as well as more demand coming through. And the cost of each void last year was significantly higher on average than it has been previously. This overspend was offset by the fortuitous position that we were in relation to interest rates on our investments in the last financial year. As people will know, inflation was high last year, interest rates rose for people borrowing money quite significantly last year, but also it meant that we earned more money on our investments last year than we anticipated. And certainly in the second half of last year, rates improved quite significantly. So we overachieved our investment income. So that enabled us to deliver that relatively small net variance at the end of the year. From a capital perspective, we spent, just get down to the next page, sorry. We spent just over 66.5 million in relation to capital expenditure for the HRA from a budget of just under 84 million. So although we underspent by 17 million, we did spend more in last financial year than we have done in previous years. So we have demonstrated some recovery in terms of our investment, both in decent homes work in our existing housing stock and also in relation to the new build schemes where activity picked up last year compared to certainly the previous 2 years during COVID. We still possibly have been slightly over optimistic in our assumptions of the timings of delivery on some of the new build sites, and that's something that we're working on with our developer partner and any other suppliers to make sure that we are realistic going forward in the time it takes to secure vacant possession, to obtain planning permission, and then to build out the sites. There's a raft of things from a new build perspective that can happen on that journey that delay things at various stages. So we are asking for rephasing, and we're asking to carry forward £15.9 million to complete the project that we started in 22-23 and haven't yet finished. 10 million of that is in relation to new build, and the rest is spread across our Decent Homes programme and our HRA acquisition programme. The final appendix in the report is the write-offs that were carried out last year across the housing revenue account, where we have a commitment to bring a report to you at the end of the year to notify you of write-offs that are carried out under officer delegation. And the write-offs last year were significantly higher than they have been in the previous couple of years. We did have a dedicated officer working on these last year, and he's worked incredibly hard to not only write off debt that is irrecoverable, but also to try and collect debt where it is recoverable. So we wrote off about 324,000 last year, but to put it into context, it still represents less than 1% of our rent due in the HRA. So although it's a large sum of money, it's still well within the allowances that we make for writing off bad debt in any 1 year. And I'm happy to take any questions that anybody's got.
Julia, succinct and understandable as ever. So, yes, Councillor Martinelli.
Thank you, Chair. I just think just first question for the officers, thank you for the report, is that I was just looking at the water conservation project, which has been delayed, and I think some people will recall that was initially a budgetary amendment from our group a couple of years ago, and it talks about delays to that project. And I was just wondering if we had any further information on on what those delays exactly were, because obviously the reason we put that amendment forward in the first place was obviously this is a high priority both from our council's principles in terms of sustainability, but also from residents' concerns. So I'd be grateful for any further information on that, and particularly looking at the relevant contact officer for it on page 110. I just wonder what the interaction with the resourcing of that project is relative to the damp, condensation and mould work that's been undertaken as well. So we're looking for further information on the timeline for that.
So I'll answer what I can, and others may want to come in and add to it. So in relation to the delays in the project, there were some delays in procuring a specialist organisation consultancy to actually do the work for us, to do the water analysis, and then the delivery of that work. Unfortunately, we've been without a corporate energy manager for just over a year now, and that has meant we've struggled to fill that post and still haven't been able to, and that has reduced our capacity to deliver some of these new projects. But the work has been done now. We do have the report from the external consultants, and staff in the teams are working up the pilot activity that can now happen as a result of the report that's been done. And I anticipate that Lynn and the team will be able to share the output from that initial report very shortly with members, so that you can get an overview of what's been identified and what's been recommended as part of that work.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add to that? Councillor Holloway?
Thank you, Julia, for the report. I just wanted to ask about the overspend on repairs and on voids. The volume, complexity and costs of the voids have gone up, and we've heard that in previous meetings. And I wondered whether you were seeing that at any point of reducing, or you felt it might be likely to reduce, or whether that is a trend that is here to stay. And also, in terms of the costs relating to subcontractors being brought in, do you think there could be a need for some more permanent staff there, or is it more effective to bring in the subcontractors as and when we need them?
I think from the perspective of whether or not we can see those costs improving in the future, we did suffer a number of particularly high voids, and we undertake a business case whenever we have a void with estimated costs of over 10,000, so that we actually look at whether or not it's financially viable for us to carry out the works to the property. So we look at, if we do the works in the 30 years following the works, will the rental income that we get be sufficient to cover the costs of managing and maintaining the property and repay us for doing those works? Or should we look at strategically disposing of an asset? And we have taken the decision in the vast majority of cases to do the works. There have been, as I say, a number of very, very high ones that we haven't experienced in previous years. We are optimistic that the tenancy auditor programme that is now well underway, where we've had just over a year now of the tenancy auditor process being in place, we're optimistic that we will catch some of these at an earlier stage going forward. We haven't had that tenancy audit process in place until last year, and the team are identifying properties where people are not keeping them in the right state, where they are hoarding, where there are issues in the way people are living in the properties, and it does mean that we're able to make earlier intervention. Obviously, it will be some time before we get round all of the properties, but we are trying to target ones where we haven't had access for other reasons, so that we do get into some of the properties that we might not otherwise have been in over the last few years. So I don't think I can guarantee that those costs will come down. Now we've caught up the backlog, I would hope we won't end up with the level of expenditure we had last year, because that was last year and a backlog being picked up. So I'd hope that we wouldn't have the volume that we had before, and that over time we will be able to mitigate the risk of the high level voids happening through the tenancy audit process. And in relation to sorry, in relation to the question about subcontractors and our own staff team, James Elms may want to come in and say something, but I think that's something that we need to be reviewing as an organisation, following, the costs and the number of properties that we had last year. It will have cost us more potentially to use subcontractors on that basis, but we do need to do some analysis on how much it costs us to use subcontractors versus how much it costs us to deliver it with our in-house team, and take that into consideration when we're looking at reviewing the city operations and the service that's delivered by that team going forward.
Julia, I can vouch for the fact a while ago we went on some voids inspections as an example, and some of the properties we saw were unbelievable. They could have been one or two of them were like a set for a horror movie, weren't they? Yeah, and other people had just ripped out the back of their homes and built new walls. So there have been some significant voids properties in. As you say, the tenancy audit should begin to show those up so you can intervene and remind people that you do need to get a bit of permission when you do things, yeah? That's really very important. Perhaps that's something we need to be always going on about in Open Door, the magazine we send to tenants. I think it's really important to remind people, yes, your home is your castle, but you still have to ask permission to make changes, yeah?
Yeah.
Questions or responses? Yes, Councillor Martinelli.
Thank you again, and thank you for the answer to the previous question. I think very much looking forward to seeing that water report in good time. I guess I just wanted to follow on from Councillor Holloway's question. I mean, certainly in our group for a number of years, we've spoken about underspends on repairs, and I think Councillor Porro has also highlighted with regards to item 7 about the access issues that I think potentially will limit the efficacy of the tenant auditors, although that is clearly a good tool to have. And obviously, as Councillor Holloway highlights, what we're now seeing is that void properties being returned to council are in a poor state. And I think this is kind of another red flag about the condition of the council's housing stock. And, it does have financial consequences, £1.5 million this year, on page 100. This wasn't necessarily unforeseeable. I think in the budgetary meeting where we approved the water conservation project, our group had also proposed an amendment looking at void repairs in particular, which was not approved by the committee. And I guess the question really for the executive councillor is are they reassured about the status of the council's housing stock? Do they foresee that the situation with voids is going to be any better this time next year, as Councillor Holloway has also asked, and kind of what's the executive's plan to stop this situation worsening and coming back in repeated committees? With as I say, there have been a number of red flags, be that this overspend on repairs now because of the state of void properties, the complaints reports we've seen previously. The executive council are happy they have a good grip on this situation.
Response that the executive council would like to make, or what?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, with the audits now that are going on, which is a really great project, like we said, we've only been going a year and we found so many properties that need a lot of work doing. But going back a few years is because of COVID. I know COVID's over, but it's still affecting our workforce, trying to get parts to repair certain things. So we've still got that problem going on. And of course, during COVID, we couldn't do no repairs unless they're really urgent, as you understand. And now, because we're getting back to normal, we're catching up, and that underspend is now going overspend. But it's good because that means the repair works are being done. So it's something I'd be keeping an eye on, don't worry. And especially the audits. The audits are a big thing with me because we find out so many different things going on in these council houses. And we want our council houses to be perfect. A nice place for our tenants to live in. Yeah? So that's what we're doing. So we are doing a bit of a catch-up, but we're getting there. And I can assure you I'm on top of it. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Porro and then Councillor Holloway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Martinelli's points, and I think we are still only offering appointments in working hours at the moment, unfortunately. I just wanted to check, I could see a couple of references about underspending because of contractor capacity. And I know obviously we re-tendered and we've got sort of different people doing different things for us and perhaps taking on more. Are we satisfied that the capacity issues have been dealt with now? Because obviously one of the delays may be if I don't know, the new contractors didn't have the capacity to carry out some of the work. So I'd just be grateful for a response on that. Thank you.
Happy to try and respond to that, Councillor Parra. So some of the capacity issues were related to that changing contractor. So obviously, to a degree, when we are changing contractor, and even when we're not changing contractor, which was the case in one instance, but we didn't know that until we'd been through the procurement process, there is a need to wind down the work with the contractor the incumbent contractor that you have, and then wind up a new programme when you've got somebody else in place. Because you do know that you need to finish what people have started in one area and start projects with a new contractor. So some of that capacity last year related to changes in contractors, and some of it did relate to shortages in the workforce in that area. That there's still post-COVID are shortages in a lot of the workforce and vacancies out there in that industry where organisations are struggling to recruit and retain enough staff to deliver. But the fact that we have re-procured those contracts with the levels of investment in those contracts identified, we'd like to hope that under the new contracts, the organisations that have tendered have done it in such a way that they are confident that they can deliver at the levels that we've procured them to deliver at. I think the proof will be in the pudding, but obviously part of the tender process is looking at the quality as well as the price and satisfying ourselves that the contractor is in a position to be able to deliver what we've asked of them. So I'd like to hope that we will see an improvement in that in the coming year.
Julia, and of course, we haven't mentioned the other. It's not just post-COVID, it's, I'm not being political here, probably post-Brexit in terms of supply and other issues, yeah? That's still
Definitely
a significant factor,
a raft of issues that have hit the sector, definitely. And those issues still exist in the sector, as I've said, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you just mentioned, Julia, the problems that some organisations in the sector have with recruiting, and I noticed that actually a few of the underspends reference a lack of staff actually within the city council. So I just wondered, obviously it's an extremely difficult time to be trying to recruit people. What can we do in addition to what we're already doing to try to more effectively recruit people? Not an easy question, I know, but thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have the answer to it. We have obviously struggled in certain areas. There are some jobs at the moment that we advertise where we get quite a good response to job adverts. And as a council, we actually employed more people last year than we have done for a number of years. So our levels of employment were good. We just struggle, I think, in particular areas. So, the example I gave earlier of the energy manager post is one where we have significantly struggled across the country. Everybody's looking at moving towards net zero carbon and passive house and improving the energy efficiency of properties. And it therefore means that type of post is, that those skills are in demand and we struggle to recruit. As an organisation, we can look at recruiting in different ways to try and encourage people, advertising in different ways to try and encourage people. We can look at recruitment packages that we can put in place in order to attract people to come to us. But, we are subject to national salary pay scales, and that's something that we can't impact hugely. So we need to look at other ways of trying to attract people to come and work for Cambridge City Council.
Any more questions? I'm scouring the room. No? Okay. If there are no further questions, and that's okay, everyone's questions have been answered, then I'm going to, we've got a split vote here, so I chair the bit when you vote on the first part on page 2, it's under, well, it's on page, it's actually on page 98, and it's A, to approve the carry forward request totaling blah, blah, blah. That's the one that we will all of us on this committee will vote on, so I'm going to put that to the vote, then I'll hand it over, but I'll do that in a minute, yeah? So those in favour of the recommendation at 2A, which you shall indicate those in favour.
In favour, Chair?
Those against?
None, Chair?
And any abstentions?
3 abstentions, Chair.
Thank you. Now, I hand over to Councillor Dinah Pounds, who is now going to chair the first official bit of the meeting. Do the second bit, yeah, and the next, yeah.
So we just Hello. So under part 2 of the agenda now, I'm asking you to recommend to the council the approval to carry forward requests in the HRA and General Fund Housing Capital Budgets, as stated on page 98. So if I could have everybody in favour, please. Those against? And those abstaining?
3 abstentions, Chair.
Okay, so that is carried. So I'd like to ask.
I need to interject, and I should have said, because I was so pleased to hand it over to you, I should ask the Executive Council if she approves the recommendation at 2A, and you can do it. Yeah. Thank you.
And 2B, Councillor Bird?
I do. Thank you, Julia, for the paper.
Yes. Thank you very much. So now we move to our last item, which is agenda item 11, and we have a report by Ben Binns, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to highlight 6 key points of the report and then invite questions. So 1.2 in the report, delighted to say that 721 homes have been completed, of which 382 are council homes. 1.3, which refers to Homes England bid for grant funding for Aylesbury Close. We're reasonably confident about that, and we hope to report next time whether we've been successful or not. 1.4, just short of 5 million DULUC funding towards delivery of homes for Afghan and Ukrainian refugees, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And in 4.1, we're not resting on our laurels. I think we're all aware of the devolution programme, the 500 devolution programme, and meeting that target. We're now on the 10-year new homes programme. And just to point out that we've got 330 homes approved, council homes approved, 151 social rent, 179 intermediate rent. That is in the pipeline, so progress is being made there. More to be done, but we're on our way. And then the table below that about refugee housing, you'll see the numbers there that we're looking to purchase from the DULUC funding. Julia may want to come in and add to that when I finish, but in essence, we're making really good progress on that. Most of the homes are either already bought or in the conveyancing process. So we're on track at the moment for the November target this year. And then the final point, just in terms of our next handovers. So we've got just under 199 handovers due for the end of July. That's 75 for Campkin. And then we've got 2 Section 106 homes, sites that are being handed over, 24 homes to the council for that. So they're the key points just to highlight. There may be other questions that people may want to ask. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. This is really, really good news, isn't it? Do we have any questions? Councillor Pora?
There we go. I just wanted to recognise the work officers have done on the Ukrainian homes funding. You know, I think it's a very, very tight timescale for that one when the money came in. And I think we are mostly buying bricks and mortar and not having to resort to some of the pod homes. So just like to recognise that and obviously be grateful for another update, I think September, Chair, if that's acceptable. Because obviously when we get tight to that deadline, I think it's really important we know how we're doing. But I'd pass my thanks on to officers, please, for that.
Thank you. Yes, I've noted that for September. Do you have any other questions, Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you very much for this report. It really does demonstrate a fantastic progress with our development of new homes. I think there's hardly any other councils in the country who could match it. I was noted that under one of the new tables is to do with the wheelchair user homes, and it's showing the properties by bedroom size. I think the report for future purposes, it would be good to have a table of the homes in planning for development by bedroom size, because this is the shared, the social housing elements, that is not, and also the ones only for sale by bedroom size would be useful to see what the differences are. We've always been told that 1 and 2 bedrooms are what we should be going for, but then you hear of people who want larger properties not being able to get any. So I think I often really worry that there's a mismatch. But anyway, if we have the data, that would be useful to see.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, would you like to respond? Yes.
Is there a specific question?
Would it be possible to add a table next time?
We can certainly look into that.
Before I finish, can I just, you're about to wind up, I think, are you? I'll come back when you finish that.
So this is very much a newbie question, but on the pages 2 and 3, you have these tables that have columns completed, on-site, approved. I can't make sense of them, and I think many residents reading this might not be able to. Can you explain those columns?
So we've got a number of different approvals. So you've got HSC approval, you've got planning approval, you've got start on site, and then you've got handover. And so what we're trying to demonstrate is the pipeline right from HSC all the way through to handover. So the 500 program is trying to confirm in terms of, so yeah, we've got 721 completed, so that's already handed over. That's a mix of market and council homes. There are still 207 on site. So I explained previously that of those 207, 99 will be handed over, and they're council homes in July. And then we've still got 2 schemes which are approved but not quite on site yet. Also have to distinguish between replacement homes as well, because that shows the net gain in council homes in relation to grant. That answers your question.
Well, I'm just a little concerned that it's let's say a resident is trying to make heads or tails of this. I don't know if they know what these terms mean, on-site and approved, and perhaps we could present it in a way that's a little bit more easy for people that are not experts in the area to interpret it.
Happy to meet you and understand what your requirements are and see what I can do.
Okay,
sure.
Thanks.
Do we have Lulu?
I think there's a glossary, isn't there, of terms that are used in this department, in this
Sorry, I can't quite hear you.
I think there was a glossary of terms used in this scrutiny committee that was requested by the reps for exactly that reason. And I don't know where that is, but it does exist. And if those terms aren't in it, they could be added. I don't know who has control of that.
Thank
But
you.
we have received one. And then I had a question as well.
That would be useful, I think, yeah.
Yeah, we'll look into that. I'm sure we can provide a glossary of terms, not a problem.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Did you say you have another question, yeah?
I did actually, yes. I wanted to know if it's all right. In page 123 in 6.3 approved schemes, you have mention of significant archaeological finds. And I just wanted to know, you presumably hire an archaeology team. How quickly do you get them on site? And where do you find them?
So this will be a planning requirement, and so there's a period of negotiation with the planning authority on how extensive the survey needs to be. So there will be two appointments, if you like, one from the planning side, which will be county, and one from our own consultant, which will look at how many trenches we've got to dig. And of course, then a report has to be submitted and signed off by county and city and the planning authorities in relation to that. It's not an easy process. We're in the north of the city. It's a Roman, lots of Roman parts to it, and there's Saxon bits and there's Viking bits. So it's something we have to go through, and sometimes we find something quite extraordinary.
It sounds quite inconvenient, though, if you don't find anything.
So
Sounds inconvenient if you don't find anything. Very much. I mean, I know you have to do it. I was just curious. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that all the questions, I think? Oh, Councillor Robertson, if you'd like to conclude.
I just wanted to raise an issue, which is that there is another officer for whom this is the last meeting, and that's Fiona Bryan. And I think we need to recognise the major contribution she made in overseeing the housing development team right from the beginning and liaison with Hill. Starting off with a new enterprise of a joint venture with a commercial company would not have been easy at any time, but with a suspicious Labour council control, we were reassured by Fiona's presence being able to bridge the gap between the two possible sides. So I think these results are results of the housing development team with Fiona's oversight, and we wish her well for the future, but thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you very much. I think we will share your and we wish you well for the future. So we'd like to proceed to the vote now, which is on page, the recommendations for the Executive Councillor to note the delivery of the approved housing programme. Could I please have all those in favour?
Unanimous, Chair, in favour.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Bird, are you happy to accept our recommendation?
Yes, I am. And can I quickly say about Fiona as well, which I want to thank you, Fiona, because you've helped me a great deal, especially when I became exec. And as well, thank you for all the work you've done on these new builds and all the problems. I've watched you, followed you. But yeah, and you'll be sadly missed. So from me, thank you so much. Thank you.
A couple of other officers we've already referred to Lynn Bradley, who will, that in effect, she will be leaving the council as well. Also David Greening, who's actually online, I believe, here.
But
We
he's
haven't
not
actually
going
met-
till September.
I know,
so
but it depends whether it's before or after the next committee. So I just think, just in case, it depends when he, I just think we should include it in the people who we will not be seeing more of in the future. Yes, I think that's important to record
I
that there.
agree. David, I've known for many years, like you have, haven't
Yeah.
you? He's worked very, very hard.
Yeah.
And he'll be sadly missed as well. So
And
I
there might-
apologise, David, for not saying goodbye.
Well, I don't, are there any others we don't know? I can't recall. Is that it?
Thanks, David.
Yeah, just in case it's not all in time, I don't. If it all go in the next committee.
evening, and I would just like once more to thank the officers for your hard work and really, really terrific reports. Yes, that's it. Do I have to say anything else? Yes, no? That concludes the business of the Housing Scrutiny Committee, and thank you all very much.